Welcome to the UFO Woman Show. I'm your host, Melisa Kennedy, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. What we're going to do in this episode is kind of bring together the last 4 or 5 episodes and kind of, reiterate what we've been talking about, and then also offer you some new information based on what we've been talking about in the previous episodes. So if you haven't been watching those episodes, you want to be sure and go back and re-watch those or watch them for the first time. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring up this quote because I feel like it really kind of encapsulates everything that we've been talking about as far as information out there. So this quote's by Mark Twain, and it's, if you don't read the newspapers, you are uninformed. But if you do read them, you are misinformed. So if you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. If you do read the newspapers, you're misinformed. And that's a really good way for us to lead in today's show because it's kind of true. A lot of the information that's out there is either tainted or it's not the whole story, and we're here to bring forth that information to you in an unbiased, uncensored, and unfiltered way, which you can only find here at WeBeam TV, which is awesome. And I think it's really good when we're talking about UFOs, we're talking about extraterrestrials, and we're talking about universal consciousness and paranormal, that we are bringing you all the information, not just little bits and pieces. So with that said, a lot of our topics has been about universal consciousness and how we are all interconnected in the universe. And it's amazing because, we so much think of ourselves as just being on Earth, and we don't think of anything else as far as what's outside of Earth, or even how we're connected to one another and to other living things on Earth. So with that, I would actually like to bring up, and I normally don't do this. In fact, this is the first time I've ever done this, I think, on TV. And that is, I found this on the way here, just a couple of, maybe an hour ago, I found this really interesting bit of information. I don't know if it's true. I don't know the validity to it, but I want to read it because it's very interesting. It's certainly thought-provoking at the very least. And it's talking about how we humans are connected consciously to our planet, our plants on this planet. And it's talking about how plants have super intelligence. And if you were to put a seed in your mouth and then actually place it into the soil, then something miraculous is going to happen. As the seed absorbs your saliva, it begins to read your DNA and your structure, and it will structure its own genetic blueprint to be a superfood based on any deficiencies or requirements that your DNA is signaling. This powerful ancient connection between humans and seeds is not acknowledged by mainstream media. This is why I'm talking about it. Because in the mainstream academia, the powerful and potential information that this has would actually affect the worldwide food industry. So, is this true? I don't know. I literally have not had time to research it, but I thought it was an interesting point to make and how it kind of relates to everything that we've talked about on the show and how we're all connected, and we're connected to all living things, be it on Earth or outside of Earth. And with that, I'm going to also lead into some of past UFO experiences, and then also relate it to today's world, today's events, and what we perceive the future might be, because we have been asked a lot of questions. I know I've gotten quite a few questions on the UFO Woman Facebook page, and that is, Melisa, what do you think about, the possible fake invasion? Because I did bring that up last week on the show. Do you think that's something that's possible? Yes, I do think it's something that's possible because it's the only thing missing in 2020. Right now I'm thinking it's the year that Stephen King wrote or something. I don't know. This year's been crazy. But it is something that's missing. It is something that would provoke a huge worldwide response. And I think it's a real possibility. And then I've also been asked the question, are all extraterrestrials bad? Well, my answer has been and always will be no. As with all things, you have good and you have bad. It's the yin and the yang. It's the balance of the universe. And so, we are going to have some encounters with good, and we are going to have some encounters with bad. I just like to think of everything from a nice, loving, happy place and really think of the positive and not so much the negative. But yes, they do exist, and as with all things, there's good humans and bad humans. So with that, I want to bring up a book. And yes, many of you know I am a publisher. This is not a book that I've published, although I wish I did. But it's a fantastic book. I am currently reading it. I'm almost through it. But it's called The Money Mafia. And for those of you that are in the UFO community, you have heard of Paul T. Hellyer. He is a wonderful, educated man from Canada. He's kind of probably one of the most famous Canadian politicians, and he has given us a wealth of information about not only the UFO history, but it's also relating it to the financial institution on a worldwide level. It also talks about politics, and he takes it all the way back, I mean decades ago, and it actually leads up to the current day events. And it is a great read, and it really gives a nice full circle approach, which is what we like to do here on the UFO Woman show, and give it to you from all perspectives as a holistic approach. So with that said, there's a chapter in here, and it's about the visitors from starry realms. Kind of appropriate. But he's talking about a particular instance that happened back in the 1970s, and it happened in Peru. So I'm going to read a little bit. Maybe we can pull up a graphic here, but I want to read to you an example of a UFO experience that happened in the 1970s in Lima, Peru, and it's taken from this book Paul T. Hellyer wrote. It says here, 2 ordinary teenagers, Charlie and Sixto, along with several of their friends, traveled out to the Santo Domingo mountains along the Peruvian coast and experienced what they claim was contact with extraterrestrials. This extraordinary event was not limited to a one-time sighting, but became an 8-month-long odyssey. They were witnessed by more than 100 people, and they tested the bounds of their sanity, their families, and their friendships, and became known as a UFO movement called Rama. During that period, that changed their lives forever, and they claim in remarkable detail that they had witnessed alien spaceships and had physical contact with extraterrestrial beings and were actually teleported to distant planets within and outside of our own solar system. As word spread of these encounters, it became clear that something transformative was happening, and it was impossible to deny the messages that were being transmitted. Frightening to some, reassuring to others. But the one remaining fact is, we are not alone. So with that, I'd like to open up the show. I have my 2 wonderful guys here. I've got Edgar, Yohe, and I have Kevin Briggs, as always. And I think that's a good way for us to open the show, guys, and talking about this 1970s event that happened in Peru. And all 3 of us have had our own experiences, whether it's UFO, paranormal, or in some cases, we've had both. And it's interesting because as experiencers, you know, you're telling the general public, or perhaps somebody that's never experienced anything, about our own experiences. And if you don't have something to relate to yourself, it does sound a little crazy sometimes. But it's not, because it's real, and especially to those of us that have had experiences, it is real. And finding a safe place to talk about it is often challenging, but that's hopefully what we're doing here today. So Kevin, these several people in Peru had an ongoing odyssey, an ongoing experience. It wasn't just a one and done kind of thing. It was ongoing. I know you've had ongoing experiences.
Every time we sit here each week now, you start and you talk your little piece, but it ties in with what information I've got this week. Again. I'm just sat here.
And we haven't talked.
I'm just sat here smiling to myself. Someone sent me information about the documentary about, is it Sixto?
Yes.
Only yesterday or the day before, saying you must watch it. It's an excellent documentary. I think it's on Netflix. I'm not certain. Don't quote me on that. So that was the connection there. I have actually seen the documentary myself before, which is it's a very good documentary.
Okay.
But it's funny that you bring it up today. I say we're unscripted, aren't we?
No, we haven't.
We just come here.
He literally had no idea, guys, that we were going to talk about this. I just spring stuff on everybody and be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about.
The other thing with the Rama group, I was given some information for 8 individuals a few years ago now, and I contacted each individual who was named to me by the ET, gave them the information, and then but the last there wasn't a person. The last group was for me to contact the Rama group in Peru. I've got it in my notes.
Do you really?
And I didn't know anybody in that group at that time. I do now. Somebody who was in that group, Dr. Joseph Briggs. And he's relayed a lot of his information in relation to Rama. But the whole group would contact ETs. They would be taken onto the craft. A whole interaction with a whole society. And going back to the 70s. Interesting that my ETs gave me the information to pass to 7 or 8 people, plus the Rama group, and then I meet Dr. Joseph Briggs through Facebook, through some of the groups that I'm a member of, and he relays some of his stories. And I remember one of them, he was saying that he was travelling down a mountain road with a good friend, and he was driving, and he wasn't driving, I think he was in the passenger seat, and the person that was driving pulled over. He said, "Why are you pulling over?" He said, "Because I've just received a telepathic message, we need to pull over because there's some danger or something." I don't know the exact words that were spoken. As they pulled over, it was on a blind bend, a vehicle came round the bend on the wrong side of the street. It would have wiped them out if he hadn't had the telepathic message. But that was a level of communication that some of this group have. Not dissimilar from mine, really. but again, just interesting that 2 topics that have come up in my week this week, and you just mentioned them straight away. So I think you're a mind reader.
Well, some say that. I have been known a few times, you know, to predict things. But it's such a good read, The Money Mafia by Paul T. Hellyer. Seriously recommend every one of you to get this book. It just brings everything full circle. It talks about a world in crisis, not only politically, economically, but it even touches on the whole UFO experience. So for me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like the best book ever, because it just ties everything together very nicely. And it's factual, so it's not, you know, not just a bunch of fictional type stuff. It actually is quite good. And then, of course, as always, Kevin, you and I have these have these little confirmations and little validations from week to week, and no, we don't even talk about it. So that was cool. Well, Edgar, I mean, I know you have a bunch of stuff to contribute. You probably can't see it, or maybe you can on the screen, but he has a whole bunch of books over here today, because we're going to tie in a lot of cases and a lot of examples of how the UFO and the paranormal and the universal consciousness and quantum physics and energy and all this stuff is interrelated, because it is. And it's so cool, because when we give you real examples, it gives you that background knowledge that you need to make the connections that the 3 of us have already made, and hopefully get you all up to speed with what we're talking about. So we've got a couple of examples. Do we want to go to the Dogon first? Okay, so we have a picture of where the Dogon Tribe is. So if we can pull the Dogon Tribe up on the screen, you guys can get a feel for where we're talking about. It is in Africa. And Edgar, I'm going to let you take it over about the Dogon Tribe.
The Dogon Tribe had the insight that they were from Sirius, that they are going to be taken back to the Sirius star system. And long before we had the Hubble Space Telescope, they told scientists and stuff that there was a Sirius B. Since then, in around about 92, 93 time frame, the scientists did actually find Sirius B, and Sirius B does have somewhat of a dimming, which means there's a planet surrounding Sirius B. And so, as Professor Hans Seuss of the University of California was not happy with standard assumptions about radiocarbon dating, and because they were talking about radiocarbon dating of the different monuments, the pyramids and such, and what they found out was that the Dogon was dead on the mark for their astronomical knowledge. The only way that the Dogon could have known about this would have been, one, they would have had to have contact with intergalactic space travelers, or 2, they themselves, their ancestors came from that star system. And so they had the Sirius mystery. They talk about the knowledge of the Dogon, and what they found in the Dogon. See if I can find the page here. I'm going to see if you can zoom in on this page. There is their drawing of the planet down here, and then this is what the actual drawings are. And
Probably isn't going to show up.
it won't, I don't think you can see it that well, but the book is called The Sirius Mystery. It's written by Robert Temple, and this is one of the most comprehensive studies that's ever been done on the Dogon between Robert Temple and Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas when they wrote the book called Uriel's Machine. So what they found was the Dogon told our own scientists, and they didn't find it until they put the Kepler up out in the above Earth's atmosphere. That's why we have to have the space telescopes, because our atmosphere dims down so much stuff of our observatories, and that's why all of our observatories are on top of tall mountains, is to get up out of the atmosphere and away from the light pollution and such and such. So it was the Kepler space telescope that gave us some of our information, and but the Dogon knew about these planets and the star system, which is a binary star system, long before the rest of Western society even knew anything about it. And that was, and Kepler, Johannes Kepler, was from 1571 to 1630, who proposed that the heavenly bodies do not move in perfect circular paths. He hit upon the brilliant insight that the planets and their motions around the sun were moving in elliptical shaped orbits. The Dogon had already known this as a tribe. And so throughout the history of the last 400 years, the Dogon were actually more advanced scientifically than Western society even thought about, which brings us into another aspect of the Julius Caesar. He got a lot of his information from the Druids. The Druids actually traveled from Ireland and from the what we now call the United Kingdom of the islands there, of the English Isles. So these people were advanced beings. They were able to build edifices like Stonehenge, Newgrange, Skara Brae, all these different sites in the old world of the United Kingdom were absolutely phenomenal with their knowledge as to how to orientate not just the stones themselves, but to orientate the roads and how they got from point A to point B. Universal consciousness is one of the greatest things that if we were to allow ourselves to tap into 100%, we would have no wars, we would be in a peaceful state, and we could literally travel throughout the galaxy/universe at the speed of thought.
Well, and that's what we've been talking about,
and
right?
This is exactly what we've been talking about the last 4 episodes of the UFO Woman show.
Very well said. That was kind of like a little commercial plug there. Thank you, Edgar. Well, we've been talking about Stonehenge. We've had that conversation a few times, and we talked about how a group of hippies actually disappeared in the middle of Stonehenge, and you brought that up. You also brought up Newgrange, which is in Ireland, and you've been there.
I've been to Ireland. I've been to Newgrange.
And what can we talk about that as far as the energy and energy grids and how this affects us universally?
Well, Newgrange lines up with Karnak. It also lines up with Stonehenge, and it has an alignment with several others. Scarabray is another one, and Anglesey. All these were ancient monolithic sites. It was the Romans that thought that the Ware people that designed a lot of these sites was of the lineage of David, so he set out to destroy all these different peoples. And it was an unfortunate thing because we've lost so much history to war. We've lost a lot of our technologies to war. And there's no reason why we should be having war in this day and age. And now it's even gotten more sophisticated with the ships, with the false flags that they're planning. The list just goes on and on with what I call it the cabal. Paul Hellyer calls it the cabal.
Right, and that's in that book.
And this is all part of the military-industrial complex and control. Who actually controls all of our banks? It's not the Rothschilds, but it's the Bilderbergers. The Rothschilds also do have a stake in our economies as well. So they're the ones that are reaping the benefits of all the wars, not the people that are common people. And this is where we come into our awakening, where we start connecting ourselves not just with nature but with the universe, with the cosmos itself, because we are energy, pure energy. The only reason why you can see me is because I'm in this biological suit, and it's basically a robotic type suit that our energies control each one. What we think, what we do, controls what the biology is of our own bodies. Whether we're sick, whether we are healthy. And so most of this can be considered to be an illusion.
Well, like the Matrix, which we've talked about that. And when you're talking about the control of finances, the control of information, what we're told, what we're not told, it really kind of spills over into all of the aspects that we talk about here on the show. We talk about, UFO disclosure, cover-ups. Why is that information being held from the public? Well, it's because they don't want us to know all the information, because information becomes power. Knowledge is power. The more educated we become, the more we question things rather than just sit back and take it. They are not in control. So the thing that I love so much about this Money Mafia book is that it really gives you all of the background history, educational and factual information that brings about all of the aspects that impacts UFO disclosure, paranormal information, universal consciousness, and how, like Edgar just said, how we actually have the power within to bring about the changes outwardly in our world. And so, we've been talking a lot about this, haven't we, Kevin? I mean, we talk about it in our book, Tap Into Energy, and the three of us did a nice introductory book. It will be a book in a series of books about this topic. But, it's still a foreign subject matter. We still have a lot of people out there that don't really know what we're talking about because it's not been a mainstream topic. It's not taught in schools. I've talked about that on the show, me being a school teacher in the past. You know, it's just kind of outside the box.
I think it's very interesting what Edgar said about the Dogon people, because I've got some information firsthand. Many of our indigenous people, part of their story, part of their history is that they were seeded here. They came from another planet by the star families, and they were left here to develop and grow. And I think the Aborigines have a similar story. The Hopi Indians do. And I know that I was on the Pine Ridge Reservation last year with the Lakotas, and the chief there, he told his story of how we're all connected, how we're connected through consciousness, just what you've been saying again this morning, how we're connected through consciousness, the plants, the trees, the animals, the earth itself, and we're all part of that, and that is part of their culture. They teach that.
Right.
And while I was actually there for that weekend, a craft appeared, and it stayed over the group for 1 hour 20 minutes because they're still in contact with them.
Right. It's normal.
And it's normal for them, but we in the Western world, we're just relearning our history really in relation. I suspect we've all been seeded here, and I suspect it's very common to be seeded throughout the galaxy. In fact, there was a case not so long ago that just comes to mind because there were the Inuit Indians. It was something I read a few months ago, and there was 28 of them. They were nomadic, and that 28 included 2 or 3 families with kids and older people, and they would move around from area to area, but they were known in the area as this nomadic tribe. And then one winter, nobody had seen them. So the Canadian police went out looking for them to find them. They got to the camp where the last camp, and there was no sign of them at all. There was no tracks leading out from the snow. But what was also unusual about it was all the deceased members that had been buried were taken with them. Oh. So I suspect the whole tribe was taken and replaced somewhere else in the universe, on another planet.
Well, that brings me to a question. I mean, that's kind of the theory behind the Mayans.
Right, okay. Well, again...
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a story that we've heard,
yes,
you know, in other instances of other tribes, other natives. Where did the Mayans go? That's
right. Yes.
very,
okay. And they had
very
knowledge.
Interesting point, right?
They had knowledge like the Dogons in relation to the universe, the star systems, and I think the Mayans' calendar was more accurate than our nuclear calendar. I remember reading that somewhere. It was actually more accurate. So how did they have that ability to calculate that accuracy more than what we can do today with our nuclear clocks? Just, you know.
It doesn't make sense in the conventional sense that we are taught.
It doesn't.
That, you know, a civilization that many years ago has a more accurate calendar. And I know, Edgar, you do such a good job of explaining the Mayan calendar and how it is more accurate than the one that we actually use today. You want to explain that real quick?
The Mayans actually were like the Druids. They had almost like 4 calendars. But the primary calendar had 18 months of 20 days, which equals 360. And the 19th month had only 5 days, which equaled 5 days, unless it was a leap year, which did not occur until every 5,260 years. There is a leap day. And how did they come up with their leap day in that length of time? They did not use what we call a solar day of 24 hours. They used what we call sidereal time in astronomy. In astronomy, a sidereal day is 11 hours, 56 minutes, 54 seconds. So you have 3 minutes, 4 seconds left over at the end of every day. Over the period of 5,260 years, now you wind up with an additional day, taking the error out of keeping time.
That's so cool.
They also had a lunar calendar, and and the Druids had a calendar that tracked Venus.
Yeah. That's so neat. And so what would be the purpose then of tracking Venus? I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I kind of know why, but why would they want to track Venus?
Because at Newgrange, Venus could actually shine into the window box once every 8 years. It was also how they tracked for their seasons and also for certain other things that they had in their calendars.
Yeah, so it was way more accurate than the one that we have, which kind of just makes me want to take that wall calendar and just throw it away. I want to get a Mayan calendar. If you've ever seen a picture of one, which I have, you know, it's carved in the stone, and it's very cool. Well, anyway, you know, they thought that the end of the world was coming. You remember that a few years ago?
2012 wasn't it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we still here? Are we?
Well, I think we're still here.
I hope so.
I don't know.
So, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just living in the Twilight Zone, and I'm not here. I don't know. I think we're here. You know, at least in this reality, we're here.
So what's Edgar's take on that then in 2012? I know I'm putting you on the spot again, Edgar. I love to do that.
2012, because the Julian calendar has an error rate in it.
Okay.
That has never been corrected. So what my best guess has is that we haven't really hit 2012 yet.
All right.
Oh.
Oh my God, now then.
On the Mayan calendar.
Yikes!
Thanks for that information, Edgar.
Yeah.
Now,
Gee.
Julius Caesar was born in 100 BC, and it was clear that because of politics and stuff, he had to come up with a standard for keeping time. And this is how we wound up with the Julian calendar that we use today. It says, a lesson which they particularly pains to inculcate is that the soul does not perish, but after death passes from one body to another. They think that this is the best incentive to bravery. It teaches men to disregard terrors of death. They also hold long discussions about heavenly bodies and their movements, the size of the universe and of the earth, and physical constitution of the world, and power and properties of the gods. And they instruct young men in all these subjects, unless life of a man was repaid for the life of a man. The will of immortal gods could not be appeased. The Celts all claimed to be descendants from the god of the underworld, who they called Father D. For this reason, they measured time not by day, but by nights. And in celebrating birthdays, the first of the month and New Year Day, they go on the principle that the day begins at night. And Julius Caesar, learning about these things from the Druids, which the Druids didn't have a lot of things written down, it was all memorized, much like the Freemasons, conveyed this information. And so Julius Caesar came up with the with this calendar system. From the beginning, the Roman calendar was a powerful political tool that governed religious holidays, festivals, market days, and a constantly changing schedule of days when it was legal to conduct judicial and official business in the courts and governments. The inaccurate calendar played havoc not only with farmers and sailors, but also with a population becoming more dependent than ever on trade, commerce, law, and civil administration, and a rapidly growing empire that desperately needed a standard system for measuring time.
So it kind of goes back to my original quote at the beginning of the show, and that is about reading the newspaper and being misled and information being withheld.
Exactly.
Oh, how this all goes full circle. Even way back in the Julius Caesar days, this was happening. This is nothing new. Really isn't anything new. It's just a little more amped up right now, I think, with the misinformation that's out there in our world. You know, so us three and a lot of other people are trying to get the right information out there. Gosh, okay, so I wonder, maybe the two of you know. I'm going to just pose a question. I really don't know. How was, like Julius Caesar, I wonder, did they believe in life on other planets? Like, do you have any idea what their, you know, philosophy was, what their theories were? I mean, do you know anything? I'm really putting you all on the spot now. I'm sorry, but
Julius Caesar, yes, did, because he listened and learned from the Druids, and the Druids definitely had this understanding of intergalactic travel and
right.
stuff.
Well, didn't they believe that they were almost like starseed children in a way? I mean, didn't they?
They were.
They were starseed children. And I've actually read quite a few things about that. I know you have too, Kevin, about starseed. For our audience that doesn't know about starseed, you want to explain that to us, Kevin?
Well, starseeds, I suppose people, a bit like myself really, I suppose, people who have contact with ET star families, and I've been educated by them from the age of 8. And they've shown me many things, many wondrous things. I've travelled with them. I'm able to travel outside of my body using consciousness itself. And we keep coming back to consciousness. They've taught me that consciousness can be used for travel, communication, and creation itself. And we use consciousness, using thought energy, conscious energy, to create our reality that we live in today. And when you realise that, and realise that we're much more than just this physical body, we have the spiritual side, we are star people ourselves, we are
right.
star seeds. We're just not aware of it.
Exactly. The power of thought is really
and all we need to do is to
really
educate.
really cool.
Yeah, so,
well, and that's true. I mean, our thoughts manifest our reality. Honestly, the UFO Woman show was something I thought of a year ago. And, well, my producer, John, came to me in November and, asked me to do this show. And there was no prior communication with John before that. So I'm a living example that, honestly, thought does manifest
I do
reality.
think with these star seeds, like myself, we are speaking out now. We're being asked to speak
absolutely.
out. In our culture, it was taboo.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's always been taboo to talk about UFOs, paranormal, universal consciousness, and psychic abilities and all this stuff. And I'm pleasantly surprised, or pleasantly supporting, I guess you could say, the movement to make this a little more mainstream. Yeah, you're going to still have those little skeptics and naysayers out there that try to debunk everything. And I mean, there are some things that need to be debunked, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely something to all of this. And we talked about last week, we have this new nonprofit organization. It's called UFO Hunters of America. And that's one of the things that we're doing is bringing that holistic approach to researching, educating, and investigating how all of this is truly real and impacting our entire world and how it's interrelated. So we've talked about the Money Mafia, awesome book. We've talked about the Dogon Tribe. You talked about the Mayans a little bit. You had one other area that you wanted to discuss today, and we've got about 18 minutes, so it's kind of a good way for us to end the show. Edgar, you want to take it away?
Well, and with the Dogon, and the Druids were extremely smart, and so was the Were people. The Were people built the New Grange and several other of the mounds, and they said that the
I think we have a picture of New Grange. I think somewhere. I think we have a picture of New Grange. There we go. There's New Grange, and you can actually see, well, it's a far away picture, but you can see quite a bit of it there, can't you?
Yes.
Can you explain to the people what they're looking at there? Because you've actually been there.
The picture there that you're seeing is the face that's of the monument or megalith that's facing east. And on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the sun comes up low on the horizon, and there's a what we call a window box that's right above the door entrance. And for about 7 or 8 minutes, the sun, when it comes through the window box, will illuminate the whole entire inside of the cavern that they built, and it's got those stones haven't leaked to this day. And they date this monument back to roughly 5,000 years ago, before the pyramids. Well, the radiocarbon dating and stuff is so misconstrued that it's ridiculous. These monuments are probably closer, I would say, to 10,000 years, if not older than that, because we know that the Sphinx is way older than even the pyramids are, and that's on the Giza Plateau. So the face of that, the whole mound at one time was coated in quartz rocks. And I talked to another scientist, and he said what the quartz did, it shifted the solar radiation by 90 degrees. So they would take the fertile women and stuff, and they would put them inside the dome for protection against the radiation of the sun, keeping them fertile. In the book Uriel's Machine, it was stated or suggested that Mother Mary went there, and that's where she conceived Jesus at, because they did travel around large areas of Europe and into the Middle East, and so that's there's some evidence to that. It's not 100% concrete, but it has been mentioned that that's where she went and she conceived. So go ahead.
I have to say something about that. So if they believe that that was a place to put fertile women, are we suggesting that there were some extraterrestrial activity going on there?
I would say there was.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that out.
We're talking 4,000 plus years ago. And there's paintings that we know of that's got intergalactic craft.
And we've showed it on here.
That we can't explain. So
right. Yeah.
They saw what they saw, and they painted what they saw.
Exactly. They can try to debunk it as much as they want, but I do believe that what was represented was what they actually saw in the sky. And
we covered that last week, didn't we? With the biblical paintings.
Right. Remember the
Bible,
paintings that we
they
showed?
all had craft in them. And,
every one of them have craft in them, and they want to say that, well, those are angelic beings, but yet I see no human body or wings.
No.
They were literally flying saucers with antennas. So, interesting.
The Aboriginal tribes of Australia also talk of such things. In fact, the Aboriginal tribes recently came out, and and I quote them, that we have hit the point of no return as far as saving the planet Earth from the destruction of the chemicals and the other things that we have bestowed upon this planet, such as the 5G. 5G is our ultimate demise.
Right. Well, and then, of course, Kevin, you had a download, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that they said that they have the technology to actually reverse the damage that we humans have done to planet Earth, correct?
Yeah, the download I had was they were concerned particularly about Fukushima.
Oh, that's right.
With the radiation there, and the radiation that's now radiated right across the Pacific to the Californian coast.
Right.
And virtually sterilizing the ocean, making it radioactive. We get a lot of food from the ocean, so that will affect us in long term. I know they have high incidence of thyroid cancer and throat cancer now in where the Fukushima plant is. It's still leaking, it's still going into the ocean.
Right.
My ET guys say if they're received here and accepted by our government's ambassadors, then they will share their technologies with us to help eradicate some of that radiation.
Well, how about we just have a movement among the common people to bring forth that, and thought becomes reality, rather than sitting around waiting on government leaders to make that happen.
I think that's what's happening now. I'm in touch with many groups, and they're all using consciousness. They're all using thought to create this new reality, to create this new reality with our ET star families.
Absolutely.
And then we can create that reality that we desire for our children, for our future generations.
Yeah.
So there are many people working towards this, but very often it's not seen. It's not reported on the mainstream media news because they don't want people to learn about these things.
Oh, no.
I was talking to a group group the other day, and they have 44 million globally
Oh,
that
my.
are aware of this and communicating with one another
Wow.
through different groups. I mean,
Nice.
that was news to me. That's huge.
Yeah, that's actually a
Absolutely
pretty big
huge.
number.
It is a big number.
I didn't know there was
no,
that
I
many.
Didn't, I didn't.
I mean, I'm glad.
And it was only because I was
Power
asked,
in numbers.
I was asked to go on a Zoom meeting, and I went on, and I wasn't speaking anything, but I just joined in, and I knew a couple of these speakers, and just fascinating to see so many people.
Not 44 million, though.
Oh, not 44 million. No.
There wasn't 44 million
There
on the
there
Zoom
were
meeting.
500 on the Zoom
Oh,
meeting.
really?
There were 500.
Oh, my gosh.
But,
Okay, well, that's still a lot.
It's still a lot, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
But the whole group are connected to all the different contacts that they've got, who are all speaking about the same thing, about consciousness, about changing our reality to, and in fact there was talk of the reality splitting, where we will get one reality here with Earth,
Right.
which will be the reality we co-create with our ET starfighters.
Kind of our new Earth.
And the lower vibrational frequency will continue down that path, and we will have two Earths with two realities.
Right.
That's the-
Two worlds,
yeah,
but
two
not to be
worlds.
confused with the New World Order.
No.
That is not what we're talking
No,
about.
we're not talking about that. We're talking about a new world order that we want to create. using
Yeah,
thought
let's
and
actually
consciousness.
clarify that just
Yes,
a tad bit so
yes.
nobody gets too confused out there.
It's funny that the Dogon talked about that, and then this was conveyed to them by the Palladians, that there are two Earths. There is the real Earth, which is in the Palladian system of Sirius A and Sirius B, and then there's this planet Earth of disinformation and
Kind of a prison planet,
so
right?
there is mention to that
Kinda.
even by the Dogon,
Way back then.
and way back then and
So-
even now.
Do you happen to know, is there anybody left in the Dogon tribe? Do you have any idea?
I don't know if there's
Yeah,
Or they've been wiped out?
No, they're still here.
They are
No,
still
they
here?
are still here.
Oh,
yes, yes.
good.
They
Okay,
still
good.
celebrate with their celebrations in
Oh,
relation to
good.
being
Okay.
star seeds, star families.
Right,
and,
but they're probably
I don't
a
know how
lot
many there are, but
smaller, I bet.
they're actually trying to increase it. I read
Now I
something the
gotta
other
know.
day
I'm gonna
about
research
again,
it.
About,
Okay.
well, they have the town of the city of Timbuktu.
Oh,
Do they
yes,
really? Do they
Timbuktu.
really? I didn't
Do you
know
remember the saying? Like, oh, I'm from Timbuktu,
Yeah.
meaning like you don't have any idea where it's from.
Right.
Did you
okay.
have that
We
saying
did have
over in
that
the
saying
UK?
in the UK, yes, we did, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like an American
No,
thing.
we had that as well.
All right, yeah, Timbuktu. I remember hearing that when I
Yeah.
was a kid. But, well, that's interesting. Well, I know, unfortunately, that a lot of the natives, regardless which native tribe we're talking about, they are shrinking, and that's very sad to me. I used to teach on an Indian reservation in Arizona, and their tribe, oh my goodness, it just kept getting smaller and smaller, and it was just there was the only location of that tribe left, actually. Whereas some other Native American tribes, they have multiple locations, but this particular one, there was only one, and that was the location that I was teaching at. And they talked about being star seeds, and they talked about, a lot of the stuff that we've been discussing. So yeah, it's very real. I've been exposed to it since I was 21 years old. But it's interesting to me that these ancient peoples that have been here way longer than we have, they have this knowledge. It's everywhere. It's on, petroglyphs. I mean, I went out west last year and actually touched and saw some of the rocks that had the petroglyphs. And, oh, my gosh. I mean, to think that they knew this information way back then, and we're just now kind of like discovering it.
They hand it down through their
Yeah.
shamans.
But yet we aren't told as the general public.
No, we're
That's
not
all
told.
kept from
No,
us.
It is, yeah, without a doubt.
Sadly. Until now, and we're all kind of
Well, we're now,
trying to
I
come
think
up.
probably with the access to the internet,
Right.
People are doing their own research, like Edgar is with all his books and
Yeah.
everything. And the
Well,
information's out there if you're interested.
It is if you can swim through the misinformation.
Yes,
There's a lot of that out there
And
too, as we
avoid
know.
mainstream media.
And that's where we encourage you as the audience to do your own research. What we're presenting here on the show is what we've done as our own research and our own experiences. But by all means, take what we're telling you and look it up for yourself. Be your own teacher and verify what we're saying, because that's what we've done. We've all spent years doing this kind of stuff. Edgar, did you find something in your book that you wanted to share?
Yeah,
saw
I actually found a picture of Timbuktu.
you found a picture of Timbuktu?
1830.
I love that. I mean, I just remember that. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Timbuktu, you know. But yeah, it's cool.
There was the Anasazi.
Oh, yes.
All of a sudden just disappeared.
Right.
And but it was the one tribe out in New Mexico that foretold of our society if we took the hard road, that the earth would survive and so would mankind. But most
The hard road. What do you mean, Edgar? The hard road.
not going with all this technological stuff and what have you. And
Okay.
and then there was another road where the heads were detached. Well, we are in that point where our heads are becoming detached.
Oh, yes. Well,
Think
think of my show last week when I was like, you know, we're all like this.
the soap.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Edgar another question. Something that I noticed yesterday. If we've got time, have we got
Yeah, we have time. Go
Okay.
for it, Kevin. Go for it.
Edgar, I'm plagued by mosquitoes when I go outside here in Florida. Perhaps Florida wasn't the best place for me to come and live. But for the first sort of about 10, 12 years, if I stayed away from the mosquitoes at dusk time, I was okay and I could manage it. The last couple of years, I used to go and sit out about 5 o'clock on my front porch, and it got so bad I couldn't go out. They were just attacking me. Now, it's exactly the opposite. I go out. There aren't any mosquitoes. But they've rolled in the 5G. Where have the mosquitoes gone? We've had lots of rain, so there'll be lots of stagnant
We've had
water.
a ton of rain here in
But
Florida.
no mosquito, and I know when they're about because they come and bite me. So, do you know anything about why we don't have any
The
mosquitoes in
same
Florida?
thing as what's happened to the butterflies and the bumblebees
the
and the honeybees.
hummingbirds.
The 5G is heating up the oxygen molecule in the 60 gigahertz. And when you heat up any type of molecule, you change its atomic structure in some form or fashion. So yes, yeah, I can see where it's destroying the, we've lost 75% of our insect population on
Really?
this planet.
And I say I
And
only
that'll
noticed
affect-
because they love
Right.
me.
And that's going to affect the birds, aren't
That'll affect the
you
birds,
know,
yeah.
And
Right, right.
The whole food chain is starting to collapse. And what a majority of the population out here doesn't realize, but our oceans produce 75% of our breathable oxygen on this planet. And without the breathable oxygen from the oceans, we will start dying from oxygen deprivation.
So again, with the radiation from Fukushima, will that kill the plankton and all the things that produce
That's
the
going to have a
oxygen?
direct effect on
Really?
certain plankton and other things.
Right.
Wow.
Plus overfishing the waters. That's not
And
helping any either.
pollution.
So we really
Junk.
need to tackle this pollution, but
We have
We
to
do.
tackle
we
the actual
don't seem to
pollution.
be doing anything about it.
Right.
But,
And I would love to see what the ETs come up with as far as a solution.
The solutions
There are
there.
ETs that are here to help us. We just need to embrace it and we need to ask for their help. Because I think if we wait around for the leaders to do it, it's not going to happen. That's
and they
just
are
my
here.
opinion.
They do want to meet with our government representative. They've told me that. I know our governments are aware of that.
Yeah.
I've informed them
Well,
myself.
they've been aware of that for years.
I know they have, and they know that they're
My
here.
goodness.
They're still waiting. They're still not ready yet at the moment, I'm informed, but they are aware. We'll
But-
just have to wait and see, perhaps.
But I
when-
mean, we're all going to be dead and gone by the time they're ready.
Well, then we'll have to
Wow.
move on to another
I mean,
planet.
how much longer? I mean, I know at least 75 years they've known.
Right, okay, yeah.
Think about it. Since right before Roswell,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
been
Oh, a long time.
at least since then. So if we're waiting around doing this for 75 years, waiting for something
Well,
to happen,
That's why people are becoming active now. Like
Right.
These 44 million. I mean, that's
that's
a huge surprise to me.
that's encouraging.
Very encouraging.
I like that. Way to go.
And
That's
there are
great.
other smaller groups that I'm aware of.
Right.
So it's just amazing that people are aware. They've been awakened.
Yes.
They know what's happening.
Yes.
And they realise they can do it through conscious energy. That's the beauty. That's the power that we have as a human species.
Be an active participant in this movement to change our reality, to change the world that we live in. Get rid of the pollution, get rid of the negativity, get rid of the hatred, and be an active participant in this world and making it a better place. And what better way to do that than through our consciousness and through our common thought of something that's loving, peaceful, and happy and positive. So with that, I'm going to close. I'd like, maybe we can pull it up. If we can't, that's okay, but I'd like to pull up the website for the nonprofit, which is UFO Hunters of America.org. If you are interested, that is a great organization that we are starting. There's a lot of information on the website. We are on the road to launch, and this road to launch is going to be a really good one, and it's going to be one that we encompass all of these aspects that we talk about on the show. Are we alone in the universe, and how are we going to spread the word and educate the public and help the betterment of humanity to expand our consciousness into a more cosmic approach through everything, our research that we're going to be doing, our investigation that we're going to be doing, and our outreach programs that we're going to be doing. We're bringing all of that together in a very unprecedented way, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. So let me just close by reiterating some of the books that we mentioned today. The Money Mafia, which is fantastic. If you would like to get a copy of that, you can get it on various retail outlets. Our book, which is Tap Into Energy, that the three of us co-wrote together, and that's also a really good read, and it gives you a lot of information there. So until next week, I am your host, Melisa Kennedy, and I want you to keep looking up.